My name's Jonathan. Um, I am a compulsive overeater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the gray sheet. I write them down. I send them to my sponsor, my handsome sponsor, who's in this meeting, and I don't eat in between, no matter what. And my connection with my higher power and abstinence aren't possible without each other. So they occupy the highest priority in my life. This is the first time I've ever spoken. I have a little over 3 months, almost 4 months sober, and I'm honored to be here. I'm also very humbled. I've spoken in other meetings like 12-step fellowships, but never in a GSA meeting. So anyway, I guess I'll just get right to it. So I'll tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. When I was really young, I never struggled with weight, but I remember having weird stuff just like around food. Like my mom was, she was also a compulsive overeater. She was had a lot of other addictions, but I remember like her struggles with food were kind of obvious. People would actually talk about how she would finish an entire like family size bag of snacks in one sitting. I do remember early on being obsessed with my weight, even though I was so skinny, like you could see my bones. I remember my grandfather getting upset because you would hear the scales coming out all the time to weigh myself. When I finally met my dad when I was about 13, or 12. After not, having a dad or knowing who my dad was for a long time, I remember he was very, like, we bonded over food, and then just like I was raised by my grandparents for a lot of my life, and they used food to like comfort me whenever I was sad, or it was always a party. It was always a food party, and if I was sad, or even if we were just going out to eat, my grandmother would always say like, "Hey, did you get enough to eat after, like a really big portion?" And she would encourage me to actually order another full entree and some appetizers if I wanted. And that was all pretty early on. I also got really into just alcohol and drugs pretty bad. Even now I see, that a big part of like the methamphetamine, for instance, for me for a long time was attempts to control and enjoy alcohol and food. I could, it was like I didn't have to worry about overeating because of course I just wasn't hungry. And then when I would come down, I would just eat until I passed out, but I wouldn't gain weight. I did get sober from the alcohol and drugs when I was about 30, so I was about 10 or 11 years old. But I still struggled with food and sex. To me, those two things are really connected. And so what I saw though was when I got sober from alcohol and drugs, I thought that like the food and sex issues would kind of go on away on their own, and I saw that happening in other people. But for me, those two things actually intensified instead of going away. I would use food to control my emotions, everything from boredom to sadness. What I noticed is that I would use food to control my emotions, but I would also use not eating. I'd use eating to control certain emotions, and then I would like not eat for a day or two if I was really sad or grieving, because that would somehow medicate the grief. Would be starving myself. It was like it's interesting to me that the different behaviors around food work for different emotions for me. I say work, but you know what I mean. For my entire life, I have struggled with suicidality. I attempted suicide, wound up in the hospital for a few days in a coma. And when I got sober from drugs and alcohol, that was another thing that I thought would go away. That didn't go away, just the really toxic voices. But I learned a lot of tools in therapy, to deal with those. And one of the things about Gray Sheets is when I finally got sober in food, it was like 2 or 3 weeks before I realized like I hadn't had to use those tools for the first time in my life. They just weren't there. Um, so just in terms of like unmanageability around food and powerlessness, I've dug food out of the trash. Like I've binged on food, and then I've poured like dish soap on it and then put it in like a sealed container and shook it up so that I wouldn't go back into the trash. Like I've um especially certain foods, like it wouldn't work to just throw it away, even though I knew I couldn't stop eating it. Like if I didn't do something like that, like pour dish soap or something on it, but then I would do that, and then half an hour later I would just go to the store and buy more of that same stuff that I had just poured dish soap all over. I have eaten after vomiting from eating so much. um, I have had to call out sick from work because of eating so much that I spent the entire night awake, vomiting, and with diarrhea. And I have a really strong work ethic. In fact, workaholism is kind of another thing that's been popping up for me lately. But it was especially humiliating because it's such a strong value of mine, my work ethic. So to call out sick for something like that, that I did to myself. Um, I have taken jars of, I guess, like, I don't know how to say it, but a certain type of carbohydrate and fat from the pantry and like microwaved it and drank it. It's like, one jar will contain enough servings for, as like a 16-ounce jar is like, and it's, 1 or 2 tablespoons is the servings. It's like 200 or 300 calories. And I've microwaved that and drank the whole thing, in like less than 5 minutes, and stolen other people's food. I often would hide to eat because I was embarrassed about how much I was eating. I've eaten so fast that I choke. Like that was actually, it's like you think, oh, that's kind of an extreme thing, but that was like a daily thing for me. Like I couldn't get the food in me fast enough, but like I would choke. I've lied about eating. I've lied about buying stuff. I've lied to have an excuse to go to a store to get things to eat and then eat it really quick. Come back. I have vomited like in front of my son, and that was, he was really scared. He was like 8, I think, or 9, and he was really scared, and he was, petting me, and I was crying, and then eating after that. So just a lot of unmanageability. What brought me into Gray Sheets is that, as I mentioned, I was getting into a lot of trouble around like my sexual behavior. I'm very much attention addict, and I kind of left to my own devices. If somebody's paying attention to me, it doesn't matter if I'm attracted to them or not. I will just kind of like let go of all of my values. I'll let go of everything that's important to me, just to keep that attention. And that led to some like major unmanageability in my life too. And I always had like an intuition around food and sexual acting out. And I was in a WhatsApp chat thread, and my now sponsor mentioned something about how like he couldn't get sober with sex without getting sober in food. And I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody else looks at me like I'm crazy when I say that. But here's somebody saying what I know in my heart to be true about myself. And so I contacted him. And this was, I don't know, a year or 2 ago. And there's been a lot of fits and starts, but it was definitely true. Not that it completely gets rid of everything, but it makes it so much easier for me. There's just so much. And in my faith tradition, actually has a very strong connection between those things too. We fast several times a week, and then a couple times a year for extended periods.
5 minutes,
Because
Jonathan. 5 minutes
thank
left.
thank you.
Mm.
Um, because of what they call taming the passions. That's been one of the actual challenges for me is being an Orthodox Christian and how much fasting there is. Like the fasting is it's vegan, so there's only one certain type of protein that I can eat, and but I just like it was a no matter what for me. So I just talked to my priest, and it's not like a legalistic type of religion. So there was a lot of kind of dispensations made for me. He understood, my eating disorder and my connection with my higher power. So just a, I mean, that's just part of what I do, and I can't eat until after Divine Liturgy. So I don't, and I have to have 4 hours between meals. And so that means I don't get to eat until like 8, 9, 10 o'clock on Sunday nights, but it's just a no matter what for me, I just accept it. Since I've been in GreySheeters this time and Abstinent, I've gotten married, I've gone on a honeymoon. I've found dirt in my cooked vegetables, like really like a lot of dirt. I didn't wash them properly. And I just ate through it because it was like a no matter what. I've eaten rotten asparagus because I didn't have a cell phone signal to be able to call anybody to do a food change, and so I just kind of powered through it. I've gone traveling. Um, so, and one of the, just some of the stuff for me that has been helpful is shopping and prepping, like especially like I'll like boil and steam a whole bunch of veggies on Sunday, and I'll put them all in their own little containers in this box that I have marked cooked veg. And then I'll chop up a whole bunch of raw vegetables in a box and put them in a box that's marked raw veg. And I'll make up a whole bunch of protein, cooked protein, and then I'll put about 3 days worth in another box that marked protein in my fridge, and then put the rest in the freezer in measured out portioned sizes, so that way throughout the week I'm pretty busy. I'm in my master's degree. I up until about a week ago when I got married, I was a single dad, and I have a pretty intense job. So as easy as I can make it on myself, it's a lot. It's a big sacrifice at the beginning of the week, but it really helps throughout the week. So I can just, I have really bad ADD. So, and I'm not used to cooking. And so it can be really stressful for me to have to clean up all this stuff that I'm not used to cleaning up. So it's just really helpful for me to just take that time, like on a Saturday or a Sunday every week, and get everything ready so that I can just kind of throw them into the frying pan with my fat and have a nice hot meal and my raw veg very quickly and very easily. Um, and yeah, I don't think I have a lot else to say. Like I say, I'm really humbled that anybody would even care, at this stage, what it's like for me. I don't feel like I have that much to offer. I still feel very, very new. But I'm very grateful for my sponsor, and I'm very grateful for being asked, and I'm very grateful for GreySheets in general. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.